Welcome back to day number 7 of Reading the Bible 365. Mandy and I are so glad that you're here. And today we are going to read in the book of Joshua. Joshua is one of the historical books which talks about God's relationship with his people, Israel. And I use purple to highlight verses that I love in this section. Today we're going to read Joshua 1 through 5, so here we go. The Lord commands Joshua. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Remember, after Joseph brought his family into Egypt, then they became slaves, and they were slaves for a very long time. And now Moses was the one who finally got them out of Egypt, right? Remember, let my people go is what he told Pharaoh. And they were almost to this promised land, but they disobeyed. So they had to wander for 40 years around the desert. Finally, they're getting to come into this promised land. And Moses has died, so Joshua is the one who's taken over, and he's going to lead them into this promised land. Verse 6, God is telling Joshua, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law, and there he's talking about the first 5 books, the Pentateuch, depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? And here he says it again. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And I got a couple fun notes here I'm going to read. Here I said, God is putting Josh in charge of a big ministry, but is with him all the way. And then over here, he tells him 3 times to be strong and courageous. And then if God promises to always be with me, I should never fear. And then I have one more note. I have so many notes on this section. Following and meditating on God's law will allow me to trust him and do his will. Those are all really good nuggets that we can remember today and every day this year. Verse 10, so Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving us for your own. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you. The Lord has given you rest and has granted you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan. But all your fighting men armed must cross over ahead of your brothers. You are to help your brothers until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. After that, you may go back and occupy your land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan toward the sunrise. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we faithfully obeyed Moses, so we obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey your words, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. And out to the side I have, the transfer of command from Moses to Joshua goes smoothly. And I think that's important too. If God ever puts a new person in charge of you at work or at church or any situation, make that transfer of command go smoothly, because God is in control. Chapter 2, Rahab and the Spies. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, and especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under stalks of flax she had put out on the roof. She is one smart lady. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, "I know the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death." "Our lives for your lives," the men assured her. "If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land." So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourself there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way." The men said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless, when we enter the land, you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers and all your family into your house. If anyone goes outside your house into the street, his blood will be on his head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear." "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away and departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they had left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." I love that story. I love that the spies were brave. I love that they were smart and made this little commitment. I am just so proud of Rahab, and she was smart too. She was thinking of her family, but she realized, you know what? My people, we're not following God, but these people, the Israelites, they are following the one true God. Why? Because twice she says, we heard of all these things that God did, parted the Red Sea, killed a bunch of people for them, and they are what? Melting in fear. And so she thought, I'm going to take care of my family. And so she made this little bargain, and she is one smart lady. I love this commentary by Pastor Tony Evans. The spies returned to Joshua and reported everything. They were confident that the Lord had handed over the entire land to them as promised. Why were they so certain? Much of it came down to the words and actions of an unlikely ally, the prostitute named Rahab. The woman's background and significance in God's kingdom plan cannot be overstated. Here is a story that provides hope to all of us. It's a beautiful reminder that God's grace can meet us where we are and use us to accomplish His purposes. She accomplished a big purpose, didn't she? Throughout Scripture, Rahab is repeatedly identified by her occupation as a prostitute, even in the New Testament. In the Bible, repetition is emphasis. God wants us to understand that, no matter how wretched our past, He can do great things through anyone who righteously connects to Him through faith. In God's providence, Rahab would become a link in the family change leading to Jesus Christ. And that's so true, right? Because here she is a prostitute. She did 2 amazing things. She allowed the spies down, which allowed God's whole family, all the Israelites, to enter the land. And then also, like we read earlier this week in Matthew 1, verse 5, we're doing the genealogy for Jesus. Solomon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. There she is in Jesus' genealogy. Chapter 3, Crossing the Jordan. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing the river. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests who are Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it, and then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark, and do not go near it. Joshua told the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Joshua said to the priests, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people." So they took it up and went ahead of him. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so that they may know that I am with you, as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan rivers, go and stand in the river." Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. And don't forget the termites. See, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe." So you might think, hey, this is a good honor, right? I want to be picked. "And as soon as the priests who carry the Ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap." So now they're thinking, wait a minute, we're going to put our feet in there, and as soon as our feet touch, the water's going to pile up again, kind of like the Red Sea. Now I'm wondering, was it lucky they were picked or not? We'll see. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away, in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on the dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. I love so many things about this story. I love that the people were obedient. I love that Joshua totally trusted God, because he could be like, I don't know about this, but he trusted and brought the people along. I love that God did another miracle. And I love that this generation, remember, for 40 years they wandered. So these people were either not born yet or were small children when they crossed the Red Sea. So they probably wouldn't remember that. So God's like, I'm going to do it again, a little smaller scale. But God piled up the waters. It flooded a town further up, but the people got to walk through on dry ground. And when they walked in the middle, what did they see? He had the Ark of the Covenant standing there. And those guys had to hold that for a long time. Everybody passed by, and as they're passing by, they're seeing piled up water, and they see that Ark of the Covenant. And I think God did that as a physical example for them to always remember and imprint in their mind that He is with them always. He was with them with Moses. He's going to be with them always with Joshua, and He is the King of Kings and just Lord of Lords, and God is worthy to be praised. And He was making sure that everybody walked by, looked down and saw dry ground, looked up and saw piled up water, and looked ahead and saw that Ark of the Covenant standing there. And that helped them to be faithful to God. Chapter 4. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from in the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priest stood, to carry them over with you and put them down at a place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe. And he said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder." So not just a little rock, a big stone on their shoulder. "According to the number of the tribes of Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of Israelites, as the Lord has told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and there they are to this day. And I love that too. He took stones that were in the middle of the Jordan, stones that you would never ever see in your entire lifetime because the Jordan is always flowing, and at this stage is at flood stage, so really high. And he said, take some stones from the middle so you would never know that they were there, but because you walked over them, you know those stones were there, and we're going to take these stones and put them here and make a little, tower. And it's nothing that they should worship. It's just a memorial. So when the kids see that, they're like, what do these stones mean? And the parents can say, that is where we walked on dry ground, even at flood stage, because God is the Almighty God. And I do that. Sometimes I'll take a seashell from somewhere, or I've made a little cross out of woods, like when I was at a camp, or you just bring little mementos home with you. And I don't worship those, but when I see them laying around my house, I remember, oh yeah, this is when God was faithful, or this is when I was at this experience, and remember that time. And it's good just to always remind yourself of when God is faithful to you. Now the priest who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed. The people hurried over. As soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over, armed in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. Then the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests carrying the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, come out of the Jordan. And the priests came up out of the river, carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. I mean, if that doesn't show you God's in control, I don't know what else we can show you. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones that they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea, when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. And I have over here, one generation testifies to the next generation. And that's very important for us to testify to the next generation. Here we go, chapter 5. Circumcision at Gilgal. Now when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted, and they no longer had courage to face the Israelites. And at that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath Haraloth. Now this is why he did so. All those men who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the desert on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the desert during the journey from Egypt had not. The Israelites had moved about in the desert 40 years until all of the men who were military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land that they had solemnly promised their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place. So see there, God's saying, if you don't obey me, I'm going to let all of you die, and I'll use the next generation. So we need to be obedient to God. So he raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. After the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. So the place has been called Gilgal to this day. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. The day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the land. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that year they ate the produce of Canaan. And I bet they were glad to be done with manna and eat some real food. The fall of Jericho. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up and asked him, are you for us or for our enemies? Neither, he replied. But as a commander of the army of the Lord I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, What message does my Lord have for his servant? The commander of the Lord's army replied, Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And Joshua did so. Ooh, we have to stop there because chapter 6 is where the fall of Jericho happens. So we'll get into that next week. So thanks for being with us and come back tomorrow for more of God's Word. And I would love to answer any question you may have about the Bible, about how to put your faith in Jesus. Just contact me through my website, nancyjoy2you.com, or you can email me at nancyjoy2you, that's the number 2 and the letter U, @gmail.com.